Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode. So today we have Simone Berry. This is an amazing person, and you are in for a treat, I believe. Simone, welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Hopefully, I'll execute the treat.
So can you introduce yourself? Can you talk about some of the amazing things you and your company do?
So, I'm Simone Berry. I'm a designer and creative strategist. I worked in corporate America for the last 15 years, and I'm currently working on launching a sustainable social impact brand that focuses on increasing the representation of Black and Brown women in fashion and utilizing tech as a new narrative for sustainability.
Excellent. So yes, we're gonna have a couple topics to cover today. But before we get to that, could you
Oh, I
tell
forgot
me?
to say, my brand is called We Exist. I always forget to say the name of it. I
Now,
need
how?
to start with the name of it and then go into my spiel, but sorry, it's We Exist.
All right, how do you spell that? Because
We, OUIXIST, as in we, yes, exist.
see,
So
that's
theoretically, it's a double entendre.
see, she's already brilliant, and we just started. All right. So, as we ask everybody, what's your definition of sustainability, and what are your top two SDGs?
So sustainability in fashion is very challenging. Realistically, fashion is not sustainable. As a whole, as an industry, it's not actually, you can't say it's sustainable. We use it as these marketing tag words, but the actual industry and supply chain flow is not sustainable. So what we can do is do our best to do no harm, to make adjustments in areas where we can until we can actually execute a circular economy, which then we could say we are sustainable. But at this point, we haven't reached the point where we can take that research, take that science, and actually produce it in more than one, two, three. I think there are a few companies that have come out with some really interesting, like biogenetic fabrics and things like that. But the executable monetization and even consumable reaction to it is going to take a while. Like we're not actually able to create it and not on a mass scale, because slow fashion is important and it's one of the tenets, but to be able to reach the general consumer, like what other industries have been able to do in packaging and things like that, we have not. Additionally, we still create a ton of waste. So I think that in order for us to reach sustainability goals, we really have to be a lot more intentional with our designs and looking at where we can do no harm. Obviously, do no harm is not nice. So sustainability sounds much better, but sustainability also has to look, especially in fashion, on more than just the environmental goals. It should be social goals. It should be human goals as far as equal wages, the work, labor force, fair labor. There's so much that we can do, and a lot of companies are doing really good job at addressing it, and most unfortunately are not. And as far as your the SDG goals, so when I was reviewing it, because it's not really something that we discuss in the industry as much, we're pretty much failing on most of those things. I think, again, it's percentages that we're hitting, and I do think that we're trying, but where I see hope is newer brands building their companies, building their businesses, building their brands to really achieve this. I think that we're asking a lot for major, actually, we're not asking a lot. We're asking for the bare minimum. But when you look at corporate structures, boardrooms, profits, EBITDAs, all these things, they now have to take their business model from here and go backwards to start it over again, or start creating pockets where they can adjust. I don't think any major corporation is going to go to their board and say, okay, so we have to take hits of like 50% to our profit, and we're going to change to an all sustainable model, and we're going to have to test it for a year. So I don't know how your profit margin is going to be. Our EBITDA is going to deep dive. You're not going to have any dividends, which is in theory what kind of has to happen. So what you're seeing is like compartmental changes innovation, trying to move the bar. I do think that a lot of companies are doing a better job as far as factory quality and ensuring that these factories are fair labor and they're not. But again, you see incidents coming up when they're so large and they're not really paying attention to their supply chain, where younger designers and new brands and mid-sized brands can really take the intentional focus on design and create companies that are looking at this. And once you build it and create that foundation, you are now able to scale it up and create these new environments that redefine what sustainability is, how we look at fashion. And those narratives, to me, as they take away market share, everything I think about comes from a business perspective, will force larger corporations to say, wait, money is going to them, we need to make more changes. Because the reality is, at this point, what is the willingness to change? Because again, our consumer isn't really feeding into this sustainability conversation. When you're looking at fast fashion, I just lost all light in here. When you look at fast fashion, people still want it to be a certain price. There's a cost for that price. And so until the next part is, we educate our consumer to say, you know what, that extra $10 is going to save that lovely polyester dress that you have to have 5 of from the landfill for 200 years. If you spend a little bit more, you're going to have that dress for longer. That dress could possibly be a closed loop and be recyclable and biodegradable. Maybe it leaves landfill within 60 days versus 200 years. So a lot of it is the education, and sometimes I think sustainability is not the most accurate description. I mean, I think we've gone through so many different iterations of like eco fashion that did not go over well. Sustainability seems a little bit more palatable, but when we're educating the consumer, we need to take a more, I don't know, forceful attentive. I personally like design for a better future or intentional design, because that really highlights what we're trying to do. And really look at it, like, are you using polyester threads? Are you using zippers that are going to metal and aren't biodegradable? There's a lot of research out there and a lot of developments that, unfortunately, unless you really do a lot of research and push, it's not readily available. So that would be the third tier to me. The industry needs to create, I want to say, almost groups. And there are, so I don't want to say there's not, but the information is not as reachable, or it's not as democratic as it could be. Like if I wanted to really look at how best to design a sustainable t-shirt, there's lots of information on it, but there's not a lot of detail to say, well, you should be using these organic dyes, or I think it's Oltex that has these dyes and these zippers work and this kind of stuff. Because the last part of sustainability that's important is transparency. And the fashion industry does not want to be transparent with anything. Sharing is like the devil. Why would we share? We don't come from a place of abundance. We come from a place of, you have yours and you're my competition and forget it. And the poor environment is suffering because we don't want to actually give back. I would say that one company that I was researching a little bit that did the first circular t-shirt was CNC, and they do offer, I think they offer like open sourced it to kind of learn where the fabric comes from and things like that and how you can actually execute it. But there's 2 companies right now that have created that. That says something. CNC and G-Star. They created a circular loop jean that I believe they're selling to the consumer, and CNC that's selling to the consumer. Other than that, we're still on closed loop. Like we're not moving the bar. And a lot of that comes from the fact that the research, the fabrication, the things that are being developed aren't democratized for smaller brands. They're really for bigger brands. So they're maintaining it, but what are they really doing with all that innovation? Can they really execute it? It's like they're holding it for themselves, like opening it up to brands that could actually use it for good and see how the applications work. Use us as test dummies. I want to say dummies, but use us as a test vehicle to see how it could move through the marketplace. It's one of my biggest frustrations. Why I started my company was to create opportunities for those that have had barriers of access continually raised, to have transparency, to show that you can create a community, you can share your resources and still be successful, that we come in a place of abundance. There's so many brands out there that are working. Why can't we assist everyone to get that type of information? There's enough customers in the world to be able to kind of access, but we come from a very kind of old mindset of we don't share. And we can't tell anyone because then they'll have it and then they'll copy us and then they'll do it. It's just very negative. Like I work with, now that I've added tech into my business, I'm over on that side and they have such a different way of looking at things. Like they share everything, obviously, intellectual property, not so much, but like they don't sign NDAs. They want to hear your idea. They want to give. They believe in a growth mentality that as things change and evolve, we do better. Where fashion is still stuck in some really archaic thought processes. And I do blame the lack of diversity on that. When you have an entire industry run by white men, what do you really expect? There's not a lot of growth happening there. So the more diverse the industry could get, you would actually have some other opinions other than white males and then white females and then everybody else. So when you're looking at that percentage tier and then a tier, these opinions are the ones that are most important. When you're looking at consumer shifts, these are the ones that a consumer will represent this. And the days of these ones at the top telling us what we want are over. So you're also seeing that battle between this older baby boomer generation and this Gen Z generation, which have an equal, almost scarily enough, some equal populations because baby boomers are living longer. They control a lot of the corporations, but they're not looking at this new generation's consumer shift and the way that they buy. And yes, maybe they still want it at a certain price point, but they're very thoughtful with the things that they look at. And as you see that evolvement, think about the generation after them and the generation after them. It's just going to continually drive as we see our environment erode, as we see diversity grow in a population. Like in America, 50%, I believe in the next 5 years, 50% of all under 25 will be mixed. It won't be, we're about to enter a melting pot of thought processes. It's not going to be the same generational thoughts. And companies are not adapting to that. So I think that's why I also just circle back to sustainability. Like there's so many levels and fashion is not addressing it. I know they say they are, but I've been in it for a very long time. They've been aware of the problem. I think they addressed the problem when they said there was a lack of diversity in women. Unfortunately, that diversity that came in did not represent me or most Black and brown women.
Okay, Black and brown women. All right, got it.
Yeah, it represented more white women, which is, I mean, at least it's women, but that still doesn't, you're still getting the same types of opinions. You're not getting a diverse. And the reality of profitability is when you have a diverse board, you tend to be 15% more profitable than the ones that don't. And maybe that's the conversation that needs to be driven. But I think there's another point that until we can prove sustainability can be profitable, it'll still be a struggle. And I think more companies need to look at it from that viewpoint. I know it's like, feels like no, if we make money, it's not, I don't think that's the reality. I think that if we can create products that fit in the life cycle, again, if we can be intentional about the design and do less, doesn't mean we need to sell huge volumes of it, because obviously we don't want that. Slow fashion needs to be intentional, but it also means inventory. So controlling your waste, not overproducing. I just think there's a lot of different levels that you can play in and still be profitable and monetize and scale and start changing these narratives about what sustainability is. Obviously, my opinion sometimes veer a little left because I look at the business of fashion versus just the creative of fashion, which is important. But we have all this technology that can really assist us in driving a change in our supply chain, limiting waste, controlling the amount of development, testing before we actually ship, creating really more innovative ways to interface with the customer. Like there's a whole metaverse that's being created. Do we really need to sell physical clothing anymore? Like there's so many conversations that we could be having that doesn't actually represent this traditional supply chain or what we see of it. There's so many different vehicles, and it's really up to this newer generation to drive those conversations. Unfortunately, higher education is still repeating the same loop of the same stuff.
Agreed.
I mean, there's
agreed
programs here that are just teaching Illustrator. I mean, no designer can enter any company right now and not know Illustrator. They should be teaching PLM, and these are like the basic portions of what they need to be teaching. I love the idea of draping, but there's very few companies still draping. So you're looking at like the top 4% of luxury that may be draped, which truthfully don't think they do because they manufacture in China. So they're not really draping like that. When you're looking at the I hate the word mass. When you're looking at 70% of all the businesses that you may move into or will work into that are more, let's say, contemporary, or unfortunately, most of the brands that are here are fast fashion. You're moving through at a very quick pace. So you have to know Illustrator. You need to know PLM. You need to know a lot of different systems. And I don't understand why they're not teaching that in school. They're still following this archaic method of what fashion is. And it doesn't represent what is happening in the world.
Yeah, that was excellent. And
that was really long. I don't think I breathed for it.
Keep it going. And while I ask my question, you can get some water.
Yeah, I was like, dang.
But I think that, and you made about 10 good points there. But the one thing I want to talk about is that, you know, I'm in higher education, and I'll be the first to tell you that the higher education system is broken, right? In that they teach people, I mean, especially, so I'm in supply chain, and, you know, some of these programs, you know, have me come in and redevelop, you know, their program, and they're teaching stuff from the 80s. You know, they're still calling it e-commerce. You know, they still have content where Amazon was the nation's leading bookseller. Really? That was just last year. That was just last year's content I just updated. Okay. So
that's frightening.
So I think one of the biggest things is that my daughter just woke up, is that shift in, you know, the mindset, in that higher education needs to work closely with those in the industry to understand what is the voice of the industry, what is the voice of the customer being those organizations that are hiring these students, you know. So how do you think technology will integrate with that?
So I would say I'll circle back for 2 seconds on education. So St. Martin's, is it St. Martin? There's two colleges in London that are a little bit different. So what they're educating you to do is create. They're not really looking at the education. They're trying to get your brains out and really look at the creation of design, which I think is great. However, that's a lot of money to spend when the sad realistic facts are very small percentages will be able to execute that and actually be successful. And I'm not trying to disparage or say that you can, but there is a very different environment than what they are speaking about. That environment required customers that you would push to buy. Right now, a customer pulls, meaning they look to find what they want. And that to me is what education needs to address. So when you look at technology, the fact that they're just learning AI when an entire industry needs to move to 3D is very frightening. The fact that you're teaching pattern development in an actual physical cutting, but you're not teaching it in 3D. So the technology that we have now that everyone needs to be utilizing, and part of what I'm utilizing, it's unbelievable to me that kids are coming out of school and they don't have access to this, that they now have to go out and teach themselves, which it should be part of your program, or at least be offered in it so that they can take it as an elective. I haven't been in school for forever, so I don't even know how you're how it's described. And truthfully, I'm a college dropout. Everything I've done, I've taught myself. So I learned how to sew at 10, and from there, I just self-taught. So I'm always amazed that when I've interviewed designers and they've come out of these great schools and I'm asking them relevant experience or relevant skills and they don't have them. And I'm kind of like, so why did you go for 4? Like, what did they teach you for 4 years? And I don't have the time to now educate you. So it's sad to me and disappointing that the educational system is still, like everything else, really stuck in this thought process that just doesn't exist. And it's not really that difficult to open your mind and say, oh, humans evolve, we change. We've changed, every intersection continually moves. And we're just so slow to adapt because we like it the way it is. And it doesn't really affect as much the bigger guys because they're living on legacy. They're living on the fact that they've been around for 100 years and their brands are honestly probably a little foolproof. They're like a little bulletproof to a certain degree because they live on that legacy. The rest of us, however, there are major challenges that if they would drive change, we would have it easier. But that circles back to my original transparency and assistance. We don't really do that in this industry. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. It does. I thank you. So you mentioned CNC, you mentioned G Star, some organizations that are doing some great things in terms of innovation, sustainable innovation and biogenetics. Are there a few more organizations off the top of your head outside of We Exist?
So I'm not doing any bio development because honestly, that I would only be able to like make 1, maybe 10, and the cost of it would be way too expensive for me. But there is public school actually just launched a shoe that is fully compostable. It was created in the same way that you create kombucha. So it was done through the Flow Factory, the Slow Fashion Factory, and they have a 1x1 summit where they've been doing a lot of different developments with luxury designers, like mid-luxury designers. I think they did something with upcycling with Mara Hoffman. They did the bio fabric development with public schools. And they did 3 other initiatives, but it's a great program to look at. They're definitely driving these narratives further, and they're way up beyond. Like my company is just right at this point, still focused on creating a closed loop process that's real. So we're looking at the fabric being recyclable, biodegradable, looking at all the pieces of the design that we're putting into it to ensure that by the time we reach to the recycling process, that we can actually have it recycled and put back into the system to create fabrics. A lot of times and this applies for everything. So we think that glass is being recycled. Only really 20% to 30% of what we put in recycling gets recycled. Same thing as apparel. There has to be conscious thought to what you're putting into it, or it still becomes waste. So our goal is to really create products that when we say it goes in or it goes somewhere, that it will be biodegradable to the point that it can break down. Or it can be, and we focus more on putting it back into the system to create another product. So it's recycled, recycled, recycled. Eventually, if we could reach, the goal is obviously to reach a circular system, but I don't know that that would be attainable for us until the next 4 years. I would actually prefer to create a whole distribution channel in the metaverse and not even have to develop goals. That would be like the ultimate goal.
Okay. So So for someone looking to create a sustainable company, let's just say they're very early stage startup, what type of advice would you give them?
I would look at what you really want to achieve as far as sustainability goes. I think there's lots of different versions. There's no one way that this is what sustainability is. What's important to you, whether it be upcycling, whether it be recycling, whether it be closed loop, whether it be circular, whether it's 3D printing. I mean, you have to look at the product you want to do and the brand. I think if you've chosen to say, yes, I want to do less harm and said that my brand needs to be more sustainability, there has to be a lot of intentionality with your thought process. The things that you would normally just do, you have to rethink and understand that each piece of this garment means something. So how you develop it, how you're sampling it, how you're cutting it, how you're ordering it, how you're selling it, all these things need to be taken into consideration in advance. So I would say that sustainable brands really need a lot more advanced planning than the average brand, because the average brand can just go. They create a sample, they just go. Sustainability to me doesn't work like that. If you're really trying to address and look at the issues, you have to unpack what you want to achieve, how you're going to achieve it, and then still remember that it's a business. Will your customer get it? Like really deep dive on the research. Do you think your customer will spend more? If they can't spend more, what do you look at in communication or educating? Do you do less? Are you doing pre-orders? Or if you can't do pre-orders to slow the inventory, how are you mitigating inventory issues? Like the levels, it's almost like you have to write down how you would launch a regular brand and then go into each place and kind of adjust. But the branding portion of it is very important, especially if we want to create new narratives. I think it's super important for us not to just have sustainability seem like kind of earth. And a lot of times, like when you say organic, people have like this kind of green effect to it where they don't see sustainable clothing as something that's attainable, or it's just, I can't think of the word right, a little bit too holistic. Is that a great, I don't know, natural, like all these types of words pop up, and I don't think that's the reality of what it can be. I don't see why it couldn't just sit right beside any other brand. The main difference is our brands aren't going to hurt the environment, and how it was made didn't hurt the environment. Yours were.
Excellent, excellent. So if you thank you for your time, Simone. Where could people find you?
So you can find me on Instagram. We haven't launched We Exist yet, but it does have it. It's private, so you can choose. I'm on Instagram, Miss MS_S_Berry. And then I'm on Clubhouse, same. We do a lot of chats on Clubhouse. Clubhouse is probably the best place to reach me because it's my favorite social media at this point. I think that we're able to communicate. I mean, sustainability to me needs to be more conversations than just visuals. Visuals are really lost, but when you're talking about it, people, it's more impactful, which is why Clubhouse is a great vehicle for us to really talk about.
Yeah, thanks for stopping by my Clubhouse room the other night.
You're welcome.
Dropping in, dropping gems.
Trying.
So Simone Berry, it's been an honor. I thank you once again. And until next time, everybody.
Bye. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.